Hello, Saeed. And can you share with us your story, your spiritual journey, and a bit about your travels around the world and your path, the unfoldment of your path?
Well, there were a few interesting catalysts that started everything. The first one was my initiation into Reiki.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't something I was interested in, but it was offered as a gift. So out of respect, I did a Reiki workshop, and I was very surprised to realize later that I was then channeling energy, which I absolutely didn't believe in before. So that was the fundamental change in my understanding and my approach to life and existence, that there was energy, something that was unseen, and something that the body, the person can mediate with.
Yes, it's very common to step into spirituality by the first glimpses of energy. So there are so many different ways that people begin their journey with first experiences of energy.
And perhaps that triggered a few things. And then the yoga started, and I started studying meditation, and as soon as I started studying meditation, I would go into these visions and dream states while I was awake. Even with friends, I would be talking to them, and it would be happening during a conversation. But I still wasn't very mature in the sense that these were just experiences that were happening, but there was no real focus or intention until ideas of Buddhism came and the idea of enlightenment, that there's really a progression in this development, and there's a direction.
Yes.
And when I finally came to India, that's when it really landed for me, where there was a strong direction and intention to focus on meditation.
And where was that first stop in India?
My first stop was actually Delhi, but then Kashmir.
Kashmir.
For some reason, something in me had to reconnect with the energy of that environment. Why, I don't know, but I had to go there.
And it's the Himalayan side, isn't it?
Yes. It's considered to be the most beautiful part of the Indian Himalayas, the Kashmir. And then after that, I immediately went to Kathmandu and Dharamsala and started meeting with different masters and just receiving whatever advice I could get, and just started doing many meditation retreats after that. And with the techniques came many experiences into the nature of the mind.
They do give a lot of experiences.
Yes.
But then you knew that the goal is enlightenment. The goal is realization, self-realization.
That's very true, but it's hard for the seeker to see that there's a difference between
experience and and the actual shifting consciousness. Yes.
Exactly, because we're so caught up in experience, and the experience high is something that one can easily get entangled with.
Yes.
And
this is why it's good to meet a master who can tell whether these experiences did bring some fruits or not. because the enlightened teacher will always see where the person is. So it's not about experiences, it's about permanent shifts in consciousness.
But interesting enough, many teachers can't see where people are. They're simply sharing what they're sharing, and they're doing the best that they can. But I really met few teachers that have the ability of real seeing. For some reason, why I don't know, but that's just how it has been shown to me.
And you traveled a lot through India and Asia and meeting many kinds of teachers with different traditions, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, I did a lot of traveling in India and also Thailand, meeting people in the traditions of both Buddhism, but not just one type of Buddhism, but many types of Buddhism, as well as Hinduism, Tantra, and also studied Taoist yoga as well. Mm-hmm. So I was just taking it all. For some reason, there was a need to take back all these practices and these traditions, to discover them, to explore them, to go into them with some depth. Mm-hmm. Why, I don't know, but this is something I had to do.
And what was your first real glimpse or experience into the self, into enlightenment, where you could realize that that is my goal and this is how I want to make it more permanent?
Well, like I mentioned to you earlier, I was innocently asked a question by a teacher to just contemplate of who I was. Mm-hmm. Given that I'm not the personality, not the sensation, not the perceptions, not the thought, not anything that was
of a changing, impermanent.
Yes. And that by exploring this question, I did realize that what I was a very simple, still consciousness that was on, alive, and aware.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And but I was told this was too simple, and then I rejected that
simplicity, knowing. Yes, and that recognition.
And
yes.
Until what happened 13 years later, for some reason I found myself in an ashram and I was meditating a lot. Mm-hmm. For like a month. I would just start in the morning, fall into meditation, and then whenever the breaks were, whenever there was a gong or a ringing of the bell, I would know this is when the time to eat, and so on and so forth. But aside from that, I was just in meditation for a full month. Yes. And it happened effortlessly, where I would just meditate and boom, I would be out in what I don't know. And then after that, what happened was I entered into this state of no mind, a very strong state of no mind, where it was unbelievable that I could simply be without thought, where I didn't even know whether I could even speak again, whether I could even say anything, because I was so silent until someone asked me a question, and then I looked at them strange, wondering, is it even possible to respond and to see what would happen? And then I started talking again, and not even know how this was even happening, how the talking was happening, where this was coming from.
Yeah, so the sense of it was a radical shift from the doer and the one who's thinking into being. And in that great stillness where the mind is really quiet, it's a very radical, different way of living, which is from the beingness. So it's also good to clarify that, this is also what is meant by presence, the beingness, presence, and many people confuse that by living in the present moment, and a lot of people actually confuse that, which is just like enjoying the present moment. But the actual state of beingness is a radical difference. It's a radical shift, which is not about energy, and it's not about chakras, and it's not about kundalini, and it's not about higher self. It's not about doing, and it's not about experiences. It's about being, and in the deep, immersed presence. And how was it progressing afterwards?
In the beginning, it was very, very strong, and there was a lot of joy at the same time. But as it began to become more calm, lighter, there was just a profound sense of utter, unshakable contentment, and freedom, and a sense of indestructibility. Because when you are that, and you know you are that, and that's all there is.
It's also very, that beingness is so vast and big. It's a radical transformation. So there comes a sense of vastness or indestructibility, and a very, very very different way of being. And unfortunately, there isn't that many people in the world who are actually there. There are millions and millions who have reached inner light, inner love, enjoying all these experiences, and even coming to blissful state and coming back, which is just another experience. But in a real beingness, there is only a few thousand people who are actually truly there. And it's a very different way of getting there. So through deep stillness, that is one way, but there is usually a certain transmission of that beingness that then anchors you to what is called this cosmic state, cosmic consciousness. So the doership drops and the personality becomes transformed.
This is a very profound state.
It is.
Just to be in that state of no mind, complete acceptance, not that negative emotions were not even possible. And to get to a point where you cannot even conceive it could be any other way, that the ego itself seemed like a miracle. Like, how could the ego exist in this tsunami, this incredible truth of consciousness that is so strong and so ever present all the time, that even the ego seemed like a miracle to me, and I was looking at it with such wonder.
Yes.
But not all wonderful things last forever.
That was a deep immersion, into presence, and this is where And this is where we met 2 years ago in Bali. And I did remember seeing you and being very, very deeply present. And in our meeting, this is where I said, but how about the light? How about awareness? And how about consciousness? And I remember just in our cup of tea meeting, you verified that your experience is beingness. The experience is infinite space. It's a cosmic experience. But that simple question of who is perceiving it, who is seeing that space, that beingness. So that was a guidance into awareness. And how did you feel at that time, and what started to change after our meeting?
Well, when you were introducing these ideas to me, part of me was feeling a little bit threatened because,
you were so comfortable and so settled into it, yes.
Also, because of the spiritual ego. When even though I came out of this wonderful state where there was no thought, back with the thoughts and the emotionality and everything came back, but I was still in a sense of presence, but not anything close to the way it was.
Yes.
And and just being okay with it, because that's what it was. So when you were introducing these other ideas, I was feeling a little bit threatened because I just assumed I was in presence and that I was in awareness and consciousness simultaneously. And when you said I was only in presence, I was a bit confused, and it didn't really make sense to me until the sense of this spaciousness, the being able to sense the quality of the space, of moving from dense to lighter, and so on and so forth, until that slowly started going away. That I realized, okay, awareness is something a little bit different.
Yes. From the space of presence, anything going up becomes much more subtler and much more deeper. So presence is very homey, it's very comfortable way of being. It's when you truly make friends with the space and you truly settle into the space. And naturally there was a sense of a bit of anxiousness when suddenly there's a question, but who is perceiving that space? Is it seen in awareness? And isn't it awareness that is more impermanent and more fundamental than the actual space of manifestation? Because the space and beingness is still manifested. It's still energetic feeling.
That's quite clear.
So that was guidance, which is self-inquiry into the source, to see where did that come from and what is deeper.
Yeah, that's quite clear. Within presence there is still this stillness and awareness, but the presence itself is not that, because it is energetic and it's always changing.
Yes.
And consciousness, as you mentioned, is even more subtle.
Yes.
And this is still something I'm exploring, or perhaps
Reconnecting, exploring, yes. I remember our retreat in India, in Rishikesh, which was really beautiful, and there was a very evident presence of Ramana Maharashi and Babaji was coming through, and Anandamayi Ma with her absolute heart, and this is where there was a lot of realization that the vibration can be on such a more higher state and so much more intense, because that is the source. It's like coming out of the space and seeing the sun as the source, and now gravitating towards that, gravitating towards the sun itself, which is the source or consciousness itself, which illuminates and makes the space seeable, seen. And how was your journey after that? Your inner journey after that?
Well, Rishikesh was just so opening. It was incredible. I'd never experienced Rishikesh like that before. And just such a high vibration. It was quite lovely.
Then you were shifting more and more into non-duality, which is kind of coming out of that comfortable space.
Yes.
And how was your sensation shifting into it?
Something lighter, something more clear, something more immediate.
Yes.
In the sense that
it's more immediate, more direct.
Yeah.
Because in the space that everything is so vast and huge, it's present, but it's so vast and huge. So in some ways, you are actually holding that space. You're abiding in it and you're holding. In non-duality, suddenly the space kind of fades away, most of it, and it's just much more immediate, much more here and direct.
Yes, and it takes a while to get used to.
Yes.
It's a bit disempowering. In some ways.
It's no more so infinite, but it's so here.
Yeah.
And the mind of course is like, oh, I just came out of this infinite space, and what now?
Yeah, and it's much more simple.
It's much more simple.
It's not, you don't feel so heroic.
Yes.
as you do when you're in presence.
Yes.
So there's that adjustment.
Yes.
Getting used to something very new, very different, very simple, more like coming back to life, real life.
Yes, exactly.
In a way.
Exactly.
And
you reconnect with now, which is life happening now. So out of the infinite space, now you come back here, much more here. So the paradox is that in presence, you are already very present, but you're holding it, you're holding the space. In non-duality, you start dropping the space, and thus you're actually much more present, much more here and now. So it feels a lot lighter, and life invites you back. You know, the real now, life invites you back to participate in life more. And then the next step is the actual light of awareness. And how was it feeling for you when you were transitioning into it?
I feel like I'm still transitioning into it. Everything just seems so matter-of-fact in the moment.
A matter
of fact. It's just a continuum of being with things, and it's just this flow of being with things that are moving and changing, and
the objectivity is becoming much easier. And how do you see awareness itself?
it's something that's always there, because you are simply in this quite simple awareness of things as they are, and it doesn't matter whether things are moving and changing and shifting. There's always this light of awareness that illuminates the moment.
Yes.
And it's just very simple.
And it's always on. It's always here. And if I ask you, can you be not aware right now?
No, it's not possible.
It's not possible.
Yeah.
So it's always here. It's actually impossible to be not aware, but it's possible to be lost in the mind and energy. That is possible. However, awareness is still aware that a person is lost in the mind.
Yes.
So in reality, awareness is always aware, always here, always now. And now we're beginning to experience the unconsciousness, which is a state of the void, of the universal void. And it's the same place when we fall asleep every night. And how do you feel going through this process?
It's very because if it's even more subtle, it's a bit more difficult to describe.
Yes, they go more and more subtle, deeper within.
So for me, there is an awareness, but it's really gentle. And for me, awareness is there, but even the awareness goes a bit into the background, where you're in this place where, like, nowhere.
And now let's direct it further and ask, is awareness also seen? And where is it seen?
When awareness moves in the background, it is seen, and it's seen by source.
And that's another yet even more fundamental simplicity, that you are conscious even of being aware. So that's even more subtle recognition, that you can be aware that you're aware, but there's a certain radiance with that. Mm-hmm. But when you say, I'm conscious that I'm aware, there's a certain boundlessness, a certain unlimitedness, even of the intense light of awareness. Being conscious is unlimited, is unbounded. It doesn't even matter, awareness or what it is aware of. And this is what is commonly described as anything below awareness, including presence, infinite space, is objects, objectivity. Even the universe is an object. Awareness is the subject, which is aware of all the objects. But even the subject is seen in the simplicity of being conscious. And that is the final home. That is the final destination. In full consciousness, everything is seen fully. That awareness exists, that your attention focus directs into certain objects. And of course the process is to disidentify from objectivity, from any kind of energy, from any kind of identifications, from any kind of spaces and presence and beingness, to disidentify from all objectivities into the subject, which is awareness, because it's a lot more free than any objects, and even there to further drop and relax into even more subtler and boundless consciousness, which is full consciousness, which is the source or the self, because the self is also aware of subject, object, and what is happening in the middle as the process. So that is the home, which is full consciousness, and it's so subtle and so radically simple that for all the people it is immediately bypassed and not seen, because of crudification of their focus and concentration is so crudified and so attached to objects. So they don't see these subtlenesses. They don't see those very subtle. The freedom is so subtle. It's the freedom is the sky. And people, we may say, they're like planes, always objects going somewhere, into another place, into another object, into another country, and always experiencing, but always ignoring where everything is happening in the sky. And the sky is always here, and it's, everything that ever is possible to be experienced is within consciousness. So any subjects, processes and objects are within consciousness. And because it's so subtle and so unbounded and so limitless, that for the normal crudified human mind is too simple, too plain. It's like nobody is aware that there is air, that everybody's breathing. Everybody's just focused on activities that they do. Nobody is aware of the oxygen that they're breathing. It's too simple, it's too obvious. So it's ignored. So ultimately consciousness is always ignored and always bypassed and skipped and deemed to be, not important for the mind, because objects are important for the mind. It needs something solid to cling on, to exist.
So this consciousness you talk about, would another way of talking about it is just there's a isness or suchness of every moment.
Yes.
And the isness and suchness is even beyond. There's no need to even be aware of it. It's beyond awareness. It's things as it is now. This would be.
But that is not a theoretical understanding. It has to be complete seeing, boundless seeing. So what the isness is correct and true, but the practicality is boundless seeing of awareness, processes and objects. So many people speak about the isness, but the real way of being in that isness is the unlimited seeing of all objects, spaces, processes, and the actual subject, which is awareness, aware of all of it.
And there's a great clarity.
And thus there is a great clarity, a great directness, and a great penetration through seeing all of it. So no matter where your focus goes, the consciousness always penetrates anything that is seen, anything that arises in the seeing. And it's so subtle and so refined and delicate that for the crudified minds it's just completely ignored.
It takes a lot of development to see with that clarity and penetration.
Yes. either development or very deep, subtle relaxation. But the relaxation has to be directed into the right place. It's not falling asleep or just chilling. It's a relaxation falling into the right place of actual seeing. So it needs to be a guided relaxation into that seeing, that subtleness. So the beautiful side is that the most difficult journey is to go through all these energies and all the spaces and beingnesses and whatnot, to go all through things that arise into awareness. And from awareness, then it becomes quite an easy journey of further relaxation into that further subtle seeing. So the difficult part is over, and now it's just learning to relax into more and more subtle and unlimited seeing. We may also say it's like a panoramic 360 vision. Usually our vision is directed from our eyes or the third eye, but the full consciousness is a 360 panoramic vision, completely relaxed and completely not attached to anything that arises in it. So that is a beautiful journey to the full consciousness.